Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is episode number 6, and we are here, Pavan, and RaviTeja, at our very own The Third Man podcast. All of us are happy, aren't we? After, I'll say, a not very happy 4 to 5 days at Chepauk in the second test, we happened to do really well. Uh, so today we start off with the review, and we have 4 to 5 agenda points as to what actually went well, what could have been better, and what can we expect in the next 10 days with respect to the third test as well. So welcome, Pavan Bhaiya. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Ravi. Hope you're doing fine as well. And I'm sure the cricket lovers across the globe, and especially in India, would have enjoyed that second test victory, which has put India on an even keel with the visitors.
Absolutely, yes. So go ahead. As in, how did you like the game, and what do you think really went well for us? And you know, let us know your thoughts.
I think if everything went England's way in the first test match, I think it was pretty much the opposite. Right from the spin of the coin until the end of the test match, pretty much everything went in India's favor, and I think it was a good, solid performance from them in typical home conditions. We'll talk about the pitch in more detail in our next point or next segment. But as I mentioned, overall, a terrific performance. When you talk about the contributions with the bat, I think 161 by Rohit was equivalent to a 250 on that pitch, and I think that would go down as one of his best hundreds so far in his test career, and it'll be a test century to savor later on once he hangs up his boots as well. And nice to see Jinx Rahane also among the ranks. And just when we were doing a preview of this test match, we had mentioned how important it is for these two Mumbai lads to, start scoring from a team's point of view. And it was so nice to see both of them share a match-defining partnership of about 162 runs on that pitch, which really set us up for a good total of around 330. And from there on, it was just one-way traffic. Once England conceded those many runs on that pitch, it was always going to be difficult for them to claw back into the game. And then Messrs. Ashwin and Axar came to the fore and bowled England out cheaply for that score of 134. And nobody apart from Ben Foakes really stood out in that first innings with the bat for England. And also to say that they were found wanting with the ball on that first day. I'm pretty much sure that if India had lost the toss and would have bowled first on that wicket, I could not see them conceding more than 220 runs on that spinning wicket. And once India had a lead of close to 195, it was pretty much game, set, and match for them. Even though England had a bit of a fight in the second innings when they bowled and had India at 106 for 6 at one stage. Uh, they would have hoped to be chasing much lesser than what they did eventually. But again, the master, Virat Kohli, came to the fore and produced one of his more sedate knocks, I would say, and produced a masterclass on how anybody would want to bat on such a crumbling pitch. Um, and then our man Ravichandran Ashwin, after a lot of time, answered his critiques with the bat and produced a memorable century for the ages. It was just like a fairy tale for the Chennai boy. You know, if anybody would have told him before the start of the series that he would get a 5 4 and score a century on his home ground, uh, he would have been very happy and would have taken that with both the hands. But he batted magnificently along with the tail as well and completed that century. It was a bit reminiscent of Anil Kumble scoring his first century at the
Mhm.
Oval. Although this was Ashwin's fifth century, but it came after a gap of 5 years. So it was very heartening to see his contribution as well with the bat, and that is going to hold him in good stead going forward as well. And then once India set up a target of 480, it was more a question of when and not if. England could have hoped to delay the inevitable and just try to gain some brownie points by a few of their batsmen scoring some runs and gain that confidence before the pink ball test match in Ahmedabad. But that was not to be as well. They would have pretty much ended up on the same score or closer to the same score in the first innings, but for those lusty blows in the end by Moeen Ali. And then again in the second essay, it was heartening to see Akshar Patel reaping the rewards of his hard work in the first innings, where he got 2 wickets and then followed up with a 5 for on debut. And although I would have liked Ashwin to get a combination of a 10 for and a century, which very rarely happens, but that was not to be. The seamers from both the sides had a pretty limited role to play as expected on that pitch. And it was nice to see Kuldeep also get a game after a long time. He did not have to do much bowling in the first innings, but he got a substantial spell in the second innings, and it was really nice to see him take those 2 wickets, which rounded off a pretty resounding win for the hosts. And they would like to believe that normalcy has been restored and uh, would enhance their confidence when they look forward to the next 2 test matches, which they have to win to make that all important WTC final. So all in all, a pretty dominating performance, the one we are used to seeing India uh, pretty much display at home. What about your views on that game, Ravi?
Totally agreed. Well, I think beautifully summarized. I largely resonate the same. A couple of pointers that I actually wanted to speak, mainly with respect to Rohit Sharma's 161. Very unpopular opinion. I was actually debating on the same lines with a few of my friends as well. I think Rohit Sharma's 161 pretty much sealed the game for us. Of course, sealed is probably some amount of exaggeration, but what necessarily has to be pointed out, which probably points out at what actually did really go well for us is Rohit Sharma's 161 is what I personally feel, and I genuinely hoped he would be given the man of the match as well.
Mhm.
Okay, let's not forget that we won the toss. That's okay, but still we had to put up a very respectable total. Uh, uh, Even something below 250 or even 220 could have been still challenging. Maybe we should have still probably wrapped up the game and won it in style. But the lead that we have amassed over the course of second innings as well, uh, great credit has to be given to Rohit Sharma because that pitch was extremely cranky. The way he has managed the first 2 to 3 hours of play. At one point in time, his strike rate was, probably above 100 as well. Uh, 160 in a total wherein we just scored about say 320 on an Indian wicket. It's definitely not just on a Chennai rank turner, but 50% of that score at the same time, a strike rate of about 70, right? Of course, these are not necessarily very trivial, I'd say, but still kind of kept it going. And I think once we posted 320 and after England has pretty much lost their 3 to 4 wickets, we knew that it's just matter of when. Okay, so this was one of the best innings of Rohit Sharma. I seventh hundred if I'm not wrong, and a lot more to go, specifically in India. Amazing innings. I'm still spellbound. Such amazing control as well, and I don't think he's necessarily struggled anywhere. Okay, a couple of I'll say chances here and there that didn't necessarily didn't go England's way, but the way Rohit has batted, amazing. So why? I mean, of course, I don't want to spice it up, but one discussion was why Rohit and why not Ashwin. Ashwin has pretty much done the role that he's expected to on a rank turner, with the 5 for in the first innings and at the same time, picked 3 wickets in the second. Uh, his 100 did, of course, matter, but of course, did it necessarily seal the game for us? Maybe can say that. But what actually put us on the pedestal is probably Rohit, and hence I was very much looking forward to him being named the man of the match. And of course, lastly, accolades are probably trivial. We won a beautiful game, uh, one in style, one with utmost confidence, I'd say, and just can't wait for the third test now. So that's pretty much it. I think Rohit has been one amazing, I'll say, personality that we saw, which we know that he is, and great to see Virat as well compliment similarly in the third innings that of the match. It wasn't easy to score those runs as well. Of course, kudos to Ashwin and his all glory on his very home ground. But as you rightly told, sedate is the right word to describe Kohli in that innings. Never lost his cool, never necessarily went for any stupid shots, even got out to a dismissal, which was probably touch and go. Umpire's call lastly, like he often gets dismissed. But I was really hoping for a 71st Virat Kohli 100, but sadly never took place. All in all, I won't credit much. I mean, of course, bowling was brilliant. We were successful in picking those 20. Uh, the credit goes to managing batting and pile up about, say, roughly about 600 runs on this very wicket. It's not easy over the course of two innings.
Yeah,
Just not easy, and I think that's something that actually blew my mind. Amazing utilization of the home conditions, and with pride, with arrogance.
yeah, couldn't
So,
agree more. Yeah.
actually, I mean, you did touch upon it, but I was just wondering how important was the toss? What do you say?
In my view, I don't think the toss was as important as it is being made out to be. I, in fact,
Hmm.
feel that the toss was more important in the first Test match, wherein the pitch was very flat on the first 2 to 3 days, and then started crumbling. So England were at a distinct advantage in the first Test match. And as I mentioned earlier, even if India would have lost the toss on this pitch, which started to basically turn from from the outset, they wouldn't have let England get away and score so many runs as India did while batting. I think it was more uh, a gap in the skill level of both the teams that stood out in this Test match. Uh, the skill level of the Indian spinners versus the England spinners was there to see. There weren't enough balls put in the right areas by both Jack Leach and Moeen Ali in that first innings. Ollie Stone was very impressive to start off with in the first innings, and he was right up there with his pace. Stuart Broad was almost non-existent in this Test match and was pretty much laboring through his spells in both the innings. So I think
Mhm.
when the pitch is going to spin right from the outset, or if the pitch is going to seam and swing right from the outset and remain so for the majority of the duration of the game, the toss is pretty much out of the window, and uh, it's pretty much boiling down to the fact as to which team displays better skills. And I think the way Rohit and Rahane batted in that first innings against the turning ball, and then Ashwin and Virat in the second innings, pretty much showed us the skills gap between both the teams. A lot of noise surrounding the pitch, which was uncalled for. Every home team currently, uses the conditions to their advantage, and it just blows my mind that when you go and play in the Sena countries on green seaming tracks, and when the game finishes within 3 days, nobody says a word about those tracks. So why make a hullabaloo or a noise, when a game finishes on a turning track within the first 3 days? Somebody like MS Dhoni was an advocate of the ball spinning from day one of a test match in India to throw the toss out of the equation. And he made sense in that manner. It's unfair when we target our batsmen and they, get bowled out overseas, and we say that they don't know how to play the moving and the seaming ball. Why can't we say the
Mhm.
same thing about, the overseas batsmen? Because if you want to be a well-rounded test team, then you have to plug all the uh, gaps that you have in your team and be well equipped to play the turning ball as well. So it's a horses for courses thing. Somebody like a New Zealand is already in the WTC final only because of the exploitation of their home advantage. I mean, we have had pitches in New Zealand where you couldn't distinguish between the outfield and the main pitch,
Absolutely.
and the only matches that they have won, if you see in the WTC, has been at home against India, Pakistan, and West Indies. Against India, they won both the tosses and inserted India in. They did not win many tosses against West Indies and Pakistan, but there was skills gap between those teams and New Zealand, and they knew how to handle those conditions better. When they went over to Australia, they lost the overseas series in Australia 3-0, and their first series
Absolutely.
of the WTC was in Sri Lanka, which they drew 1-1. So uh, you know that shows how much of an advantage that they gained from their home conditions. But nobody's holding it against them. So why should you be holding it against India or any subcontinental team when they prepare such pitches? If India would have got bowled out for less than 150 in both the innings, maybe then you could have made a valid point of the pitch not providing a fair contest between the bat and the ball. But as you mentioned, we scored more than 600 runs on that pitch in both the innings, and England failed to even reach half of that in their both the innings. So I don't think the toss played a crucial role over there, and I think we should just stop uh, s- uh, speaking about pitches in the respective home countries. Not only in India but other countries as well. I think this debate should end once for all. And that's the beauty of Test cricket: different countries, different climates, different conditions, different soils. And if you want to be the best, you've got to pass the test on every damn platform over there. Uh, and I don't know why this has been drilled into uh, the cricket viewing public that an ideal cricket pitch is one which seams and swings for the first 2 days. It is good for batting the next 2 days, and then on the last day or on the late evening of the fourth day and fifth day, it should be helping the spinners. You're not going to get such pitches everywhere. You're not going to get such pitches across different conditions. You hardly can make a ideal cricket pitch. And if there was a formula attached to that, everybody would be producing. So I think that debate should stop once for all. And this is one good thing I like about this Indian team is that when they tour and when they have lost test matches within a couple of days or 3 days in New Zealand and in England as well, but they never crib. Uh, they mentioned that we treat every game as our home game. That's good to say, but that's also good to follow because they are like, we know that these conditions are going to be provided to us. So what we have in our control is to deliver a performance on such conditions. And if we do so, kudos to us. And if we don't do so, we look to improve on what we can do ahead. Uh, and I mean, you don't come to the subcontinent expecting anything else but, the ball spinning right from the outset. So that is my view of, how the toss can be taken out of the equation on such kind of pitches. Uh, what are your thoughts on that, Ravi?
So true. I totally agree with the fact that it had nothing to do with the toss. The pitch was pretty much, made for us. There's nothing to actually, let's come out of that sporting wicket wala approach. As you rightly told, MS was he did advocate it, and of course, I think a 4-0 against Australia was pretty much possible for that. Thankfully, we didn't have any Sharad Pawar running the show there and prepare a green wicket for nothing. Having said that, one more point is even if Australia actually make it to the final of World Test Championship, they also happen to tour England only once, okay, as part of their entire schedule. They
Yeah.
pretty much thrashed out Pakistan at home, thrashed New Zealand, of course, got a beating from India, but still managed one victory. Uh, so, what are we talking here? I mean, New Zealand is playing in the final. Say Australia is playing in the final. England is probably the third to, there's India, of course. All of them predominantly pretty much played largely at home, especially if Australia and New Zealand go. So I don't see necessarily any fuss about how a pitch should be prepared to actually last 5 days or and so on and so forth. When Ireland toured England last year, or if I think it was in 2019, right before the Ashes, England were bowled out for probably 120 or less than that.
Yeah.
We've seen such games happening as well, and predominantly we see this happening largely from the English media. I think there's some amount of sane minds actually coming down from down under, but of course they did want England to win so that they'll actually progress and so on and so forth. But yeah, the pitch story pretty much ends there. I don't see any fuss. You come to India, of course, Mehman Nawazi rahega, but but of course not in terms of the pitch, right? And it would be interesting to see how the Ahmedabad track also will be prepared. Uh, and there are we of course we do know what necessarily happened at Motera over the years, but there's a new stadium. The soil is apparently new as well. Uh, Not much in terms of the soil used, but also there has been the conditions have been quite adopted. So it would be really interesting to see uh, how the Motera wicket will largely be prepared. So I mean, before we actually go to the third test and the squads that are recently released, I mean, what do you think England could have done better? In my view, I think they were hopeless, they were clueless, uh, we know to start with, but probably they should have gone with Dombes and maybe not have played Olipop. Maybe I thought the third spinner could have given them variety. Of course, Root was putting in overs, but still I think Dombes' inclusion could have helped them. And of course, this whole rotation policy is something very alien to me. I just don't get it. People flying in and flying out and whatnot and being rested for nothing. So what do you think England could have done better to at least be competitive, if not win?
Um, I think they would have got their playing 11 selection much better. Of course, we have this rotation policy going on, which is absolutely absurd as far as I am concerned. They have named a full strength squad for the T20 series, and the priorities are being highlighted. Because the T20 World Cup is scheduled later this year, and we have another World Cup next year as well. So they are wanting to play full strength squads in that format. But you don't want to jeopardize your chances in test matches, and this is coming from England, who is thought to be one of the pioneers of the test game, and the country where still crowds flock to see in test cricket. Um, Dombes, we had a discussion about him, and I mentioned that I would like to see Moeen Ali in his place. So I think that selection, as per my knowledge, was correct. But I definitely would have gone in with James Anderson in place of Stuart Broad, especially when you knew that Jofra Archer was unfit and would not play the test match. So you needed at least one bowler who has had some kind of form coming into the game. Uh, yes, he has 517 wickets for England, but Stuart Broad has been an underachiever in the subcontinental conditions. In India, I think he has an average of more than 50. So I think that selection could have been better from their end. Um, Apart from that, I think they did not have much choice as far as their batting is concerned. Uh, they could only do with whatever players that they had. They did not have Zach Crawley to select. Uh, uh, so I don't think they had many options as far as their batting is concerned. The only positive that I see for them from this match is the keeping and batting of Ben Fowkes. To be honest, this was my first proper look at him. I did not see that series in 2018 in Sri Lanka, where he performed very well and was the man of the series once he made his debut. Then he just got one odd chance in the Caribbean and was then, discarded, unfortunately. But he gave a keeping masterclass over here in Chennai, and it was so heartening to see his counterpart Bishop Path also doing a good job behind the wickets. Very tough when you consider that wicket keepers have to collect balls at shoulder height to spinners on a pitch. Um, I hope that they stick around with Ben Fowkes, considering they have Johnny Bairstow and Josh Butler. Again, it's the same situation like Saha or Pant, whether you want your best keeper or a keeper who can bat uh, to be given priority. But I definitely think that there can be a space for both Butler and Fowkes in the longer scheme of things. And just interesting to know that he was based in Essex and he was not getting many chances for Essex as well because they had a certain James Foster who was touted to be the best keeper in England. Unfortunately, he also did not represent England much in Test cricket. The way he was built up, he did not do justice to his talent. And then he made the move to Surrey. And once he was in Surrey, he got opportunities that he desired and performed very well in the county circuit. So it was nice to see him, with his glove work. After a long time, we have seen a keeper with such good glove work. At least the best overseas wicketkeeper I've seen in recent times to come to India and do such a nice job. Um, Apart from that, those couple of changes that I mentioned, I don't think England could have done much on this kind of a track with the limited skill set that they have. And the problem with Dombes is that he's going to take wickets for you, but he's also going to provide loose balls in an equal capacity. And the way he bowled in the second innings of the first Test match uh, was what might have sealed the fate as far as the second Test is concerned. But I'm pretty much sure that he's going to come back into the scheme of things now that Moeen Ali has chosen. Oh, I'm sorry, I said that word chosen because that's become a topic of discussion in the last couple of days, which is again flabbergasting, uh, around their rotation policy and apparently route. And Silver would have come out and apologized to Moen because they might not have used the correct language, uh, wherein it was, scheduled departure for him even before the series started. So you can't have one rule for, say, Josh Butler, Mark Wood, and Sam Curran, and another rule for Moeen Ali. You understand that it's been testing time for him as well when he got COVID positive in Sri Lanka. And apparently, I was reading that the chief selector Ed Smith requested him if he could stay on, but he refused and wanted to go and spend some time. And it's funny that he's going to be only for a week in England, and 26th of February is when he'll be flying back to quarantine in time for the T20 series. So it shows where their priorities lie. It also shows that the ECB has lined up so many test matches for them, 17 test matches this year, which is unheard of, just to recover from their financial losses from previous year due to COVID-19. And they have a lot of white ball cricket as well. They don't want their players to miss the IPL because of the repercussions that can cause. And they have the 100 also in its first season coming up. They have to look forward to their home series again. They have sandwiched a two-test series against New Zealand. I don't know for what. And then they have a 5-test match series in the return leg against India, followed by the away to Australia for the Ashes. So I think it's been a mismanagement as far as their board is concerned, where they are trying to just rake in as much money as they can, which uh, they could not make last year due to COVID-19, and they suffered losses at the cost of the players. And so that is depriving them to play their first choice team as far as Test cricket is concerned. So, yeah, let's see what they come up with in Motera. They had 4 changes from the first Test match. That is after winning the first Test match, and I don't see anything less than 3 or 4 changes again in the third Test match. Of course, we'll discuss more of that in detail next week when we do a preview to that pink ball Test match. Um, what are your views on that, Ravi? Before we wrap it up.
Yep, certainly. So, actually, I really like these keepers with amazing, reflexes. Jack Russell was one. I never watched him play, to be honest, but I watch a lot of YouTube videos. And actually, folks actually replicated those reflexes, especially when he was keeping up for Stuart Broad. Amazing keeping, and also it talks a lot about the approach that England also took. Their keeping strength or the depth is amazing. Like we were discussing the other day as well. Rory Burns is in the playing lineup, and he's a full-time keeper himself. Ben Fokes, Ollie Pope, Josh Butler is not with the squad, but there's Johnny Bairstow flying in. All of these guys are proper keepers and keepers who actually can bat pretty well. Uh, pretty well. So of course, it would be an interesting combination to see who would really make into the cut. Actually, while these guys have their keeping skills set, they're primarily picked for their batting, and that's how bloody good they are. Uh, of course, the succession planning and everything is pretty much in place. What needs to be also closely looked at is what would England do in the third test, and of course, like you rightly pointed out, I think we can discuss in detail. With respect to India, of course, Shardul has been released as for the Vijay Hazare Trophy. Uh, of course, Umesh is replacing him, but I don't personally think he'll be getting a game. Uh, so interesting few days ahead, and of course, we'll definitely cover this as part of our next segment.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of combination India go in with in that ping ball test match because I see the top six pretty much settled, and I see a room for a third seamer. More or
Mhm.
less, he's going to come in at the expense of Kuldeep, I think. So whether it's going to be Umesh or uh, Siraj, that's going to make the cut because I'm pretty much sure that Bumrah and Ishant would play. And when we're
Sure.
doing our preview, we'll obviously give some time for discussion over Ishant Sharma because he's going to play his 100th test match, and that's not a mean achievement for an Indian fast bowler to do so. We'll have some insight into his career so far as well. But I think, yes, overall, it's been a good week for the test match cricket. Uh, and it has, poised the series nicely at 1-all. And we have the ping ball test match to look forward to, and it's an unknown quantity because it's a new stadium plus SG ping ball, and we have only had one test match so far against a Bangladesh side that was not that competitive, so we don't know what kind of pitch will be produced and how it's going to assist the bowlers versus the batsmen. Uh, with that, I think it'll be a good time to wrap up on this particular episode of the Third Man Cricket Podcast, Ravi. And
Surely, yes. Yep.
we will be back with another episode shortly, where we will discuss about the recently concluded cricket from Pakistan, the T20 series between Pakistan and South Africa, and that humdinger of a win by the Windies in Mirpur, Dhaka, where they won the Test series 2-0 as well. And then next week, we'll obviously have the preview to the ping ball test match, and also in a couple of days, we will discuss the new look or the new picks from the IPL auctions that are scheduled for tomorrow, and which are the players that got picked to fill in the uh, gaps by the respective teams.
That's it. Nothing much. Thanks for your time, everyone. And of course, we'll be back with much more uh, content, I'd say, with respect to cricket the next week. See you all.
Thank you. See you.